Welcome, everyone.
To order. Welcome to meeting number 4 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on National Defense. Pursuant to the Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Wednesday, October the 14th, 2020, the committee is meeting today to study the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on Canadian Armed Forces operations. So we've done this before in hybrid format, so the same rules apply. So please keep in mind those, and myself included, those of us who are attending in person must abide by the rules for the public health measures in force at the present time. And all right, so when you're not speaking, please put your mic on mute. And when it comes to the speaking list, the clerk and I will do our very best we can to maintain the order of speaking for all members. And all right, so I would like to begin by welcoming our witnesses this morning. I'm very grateful that you could join us this morning, and I think I will probably hand it over to Major General Trevor Cadieux, and I'll ask him to introduce the members of his team, and then he can proceed with his opening statement. And further, Troy Crosby, who is ADM Material, he will join us for the second half of this hour. So he'll be joining us at about noon. And when he comes on online, we'll just take a little break and we'll introduce him into the meeting, and then we will carry on. All right then. Bienvenue, Major General.
Welcome, Major General Trevor Cadieux.
Introduce your team. Merci.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Before I get started, I just want to confirm that you can hear me. Okay. Madam Chair, je vous remercie de nous avoir.
Thank you for the invitation to discuss the role of DNDCAF in the whole of government response to evolving COVID-19 situation and the impact of COVID-19 on domestic and international operations.
Madam Chair, our Major General Mark Bilodeau, he's the Surgeon General for the Canadian Armed Forces. Rear Admiral Rebecca Patterson, she's the Commander of the Canadian Armed Forces Health Services Group. As you indicated, Mr. Troy Crosby, the Assistant Deputy Minister for the Materiel Group, will be joining us for the second hour of this meeting. Since the start of this pandemic, which has claimed the lives of thousands of precious Canadians and well over 1 million people globally, our most sacred duty in the Canadian Armed Forces has been to mobilize for what has been and must continue to be a whole-of-nation defense against COVID-19. Starting in February, as we all work to better understand the disease and the threats it posed, the Canadian Armed Forces deployed in support of global affairs and the Public Health Agency under the rubric of Operation Globe. That was the mission we established to repatriate Canadians from China, Japan, and the United States. As part of this operation, Canadian Forces Health Services medical personnel screened and prepared travelers for their journey and provided compassionate in-flight and post-flight care. Upon arrival in Canada, the Canadian Armed Forces, in coordination with the Public Health Agency and the Red Cross, facilitated the quarantine of nearly 1,000 Canadians at Canadian Forces Base Trenton by providing accommodations, transportation, food services, and general duty support. Approximately 300 Canadian Armed Forces members, personnel, supported Operation Globe. As our nation organized to delay and mitigate the effects of COVID-19, the Chief of Defense Staff issued direction to protect the force and prepare for a potential large-scale and enduring domestic response known as Operation Laser. That's a critical Canadian Armed Forces mission that continues today. In order to ready the Canadian Armed Forces, we dispersed personnel, we restricted travel and engagements, and we temporarily contracted our global force posture in order to privilege support to Canadians. We established Task Force Laser, a formidable team of 24,000 Canadian Armed Forces members, regular force, reserve force, Canadian Rangers, and civilians, postured throughout the nation and ready to respond to requests for Canadian Armed Forces assistance. You are familiar with the tireless work of Canadian Armed Forces men and women in 54 long-term care facilities in the provinces of Quebec and Ontario. After undergoing a focused training and orientation program, these members needed to move decisively to form augmented civilian care teams and rapidly surge into facilities hit the hardest by COVID-19. In the course of their duties, our teammates observed issues related to the provision of care to residents in some of those facilities. As you would expect of your Canadian Armed Forces, these uniformed members immediately reported their findings while taking immediate corrective action on the ground alongside civilian colleagues to provide dignified care. This effort involved nearly 2,000 Canadian Armed Forces members, many of whom selflessly gave of themselves to better protect our most vulnerable Canadians in some of their darkest moments. Separately, the Canadian Armed Forces has been honored to provide support to other Canadians in this very challenging year. Hundreds of Canadian Rangers, for example, have reinforced public health measures in northern and remote communities while facilitating the delivery of humanitarian aid. Concurrently, Department of National Defense and Canadian Armed Forces logistics experts have helped the Public Health Agency to strengthen its medical supply chain by assisting with the reception, warehousing, and distribution of personal protective equipment and medical material across the country. While protecting Canadians was and will continue to be our number one priority, the Canadian Armed Forces was also able to project aircraft and crews in support of the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs to deliver life-saving medical equipment and humanitarian aid to numerous countries in Latin America and the Caribbean this past summer. This effort was hailed both by the United Nations and our closest allies. In addition, although some training and activities have paused to ensure the continued safety and security of our personnel during this pandemic, your military continues to be active in operations abroad. In fact, nearly 2,000 troops are deployed in support of Canada's allies globally. Looking ahead, we recognize that additional unity, determination, and sacrifice will be required of all of us to eventually prevail in this fight against COVID. The Canadian Armed Forces remains poised to do our part alongside other government departments, partners, and Canadians. We have liaison officers working in support of other government departments in order to streamline communications. We are integral to all government contingency planning, and we maintain a robust ready force comprising sea, land, and air force elements. Our teams are again fully integrated with the Public Health Agency of Canada, where we are working with optimism and enthusiasm as part of the COVID-19 vaccine rollout task force. Specifically, the Canadian Armed Forces is assisting with the development of a logistics support plan for the rollout of the vaccine. We're helping to establish a national operations center that will oversee distribution of the vaccine. And the Chief of Defense staff will be prepared to provide advice on how best to use Canadian Armed Forces resources for the actual rollout of the vaccine in the weeks and months to come. Finally, I will close by acknowledging that we, like most Canadians, have learned how to better function in the midst of this pandemic. And we are applying the tough lessons from our operations to enhance our resilience, to grow from and to be better for these experiences. Our Chief of Defense Staff and Deputy Minister have directed that we continually refine our understanding and application of public health measures to protect ourselves, our loved ones, and our communities. Moreover, we are mobilizing medical and mental health supports to enhance the wellness of Canadian Armed Forces troops. We continuously work to strengthen our stocks of personal protective equipment, and we are developing innovative risk mitigation strategies to reduce the risk of community transition as we conduct operations in support of Canada. Madame la Présidente, Mesdames.
Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to taking your questions.
All right. Thank you very much, General Cadieux. And on behalf of myself and the entire committee team, we would like to say thank you for everything that you have done. It was quite obvious, the coverage that was in the media about the work that the Canadian Armed Forces had done in support of Canadians during this pandemic. And we just would like to thank you. So we will commence with the questioning around. And first up for 6 minutes is Mr. Benson.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, all the witnesses, and I concur and thank you for your service to Canada. Major General Cadu, many of our allies and partners, they have domestic organizations to help them with disaster responses. For example, in the United States, they have FEMA, and in Canada, we now are relying highly on the military. And I wonder if you've given some thought to, because we're going to have these pandemics are going to be ongoing. We have all these environmental issues now with floods and fires and et cetera. Is the military giving some long-term thinking and planning to organize the military to be doing this on a long-term basis with the necessary training they'll need for dealing with, on one hand, foreign interventions, and then on one hand, the interventions they'll need within Canada, which are totally different in nature and how they do that and have different costs involved. But have you been giving some thought to how we use our reserves and how we use our regular forces to deal with this on an ongoing basis?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. This is absolutely something that our Chief of Defense Staff has been considering with the senior leadership of the Canadian Armed Forces. On the one hand, of course, our nation, as is the case with all of our allies, we are confronting a rapidly evolving security situation globally. The threats posed by potential adversaries is something that the Canadian Armed Forces needs to organize for. And so our Chief of Defense Staff is focused on what capabilities, what resources need to mobilize to defend Canada and Canadians against external threats. But of course, he also recognizes that at home, we need to be prepared to support Canadians in their time of need. And we have seen that, as you suggest, on many occasions over the last several years. And so he has directed us to consider what additional training in organizational structures are required to be prepared to respond to other natural disasters, weather events, and domestic emergencies.
Would you say that right now we need to increase the size of our military, both in size of our reserves and in our regular forces, to deal with all of the situations we're encountering?
In terms of resourcing of the Canadian Armed Forces, Madam Chair, of course, that's the subject of deliberations from the Government of Canada based on the advice of our Chief of Defense Staff. We are organizing with the resources at our disposal to be able to address those two requirements, the imperative to protect Canada and Canadians, but also be able to respond domestically to emergencies that might arise.
Right now, they say there's 384, or there was 384 cases reported over the last 10 months of COVID-19 in the forces. I know you guys have pulled back on training a lot for the safety of our personnel. Some training has been resumed. I know we had some training in Wainwright a few weeks ago. Can you talk a little bit about how the training, because these pandemics is going to continue on for some time, we do have to resume some training and get our forces, in top condition. What are our plans for getting our training back up to speed again?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. You are absolutely right. In order for the Canadian Armed Forces to maintain its edge, to be prepared to respond to emerging threats, our members have to continually train for the different types of environments that they might be deployed into. And so initially, when we knew little about this disease, there was a requirement to contract the force and privilege the support that we were providing to Canadians. Over time, as we better understood COVID-19 It allowed us to initiate or reinitiate a number of training and operational activities. In general terms, our Chief of Defense Staff and our Deputy Minister have articulated a number of guiding principles, if you will, that need to be put into place as our force generators, our different environments re-engage in training. So for example, it's absolutely essential that our teammates respect public health measures, that they have at their disposal non-medical masks and personal protective equipment if it's required, that they're properly trained on the use of personal protective equipment. We make sure that there's a period of onboarding for all Canadian Armed Forces members and Department of National Defense personnel before they come back into work so that they can visualize the environment they're going to be in, while making sure that we respect the flexibility that some of our teammates require to be working from home. And then the last thing that I would say as we deploy back into the field to conduct our maneuver training, it's forced us to mobilize some imagination, some innovation on how to do that safely. And so maintaining physical distancing, for example, strong hygiene, it requires significant attention to detail and strong leadership and cohesion amongst all of our teams.
I agree.
Time
There's
is
a
up,
lot of
Mr.
new. Oh, sorry.
I'm afraid your time is up. Monsieur Robillard.
Mr. Robillard. Yes. Hello, Major General, and welcome to you and your team. My first question, within the Canadian Armed Forces, what was the role of women within the laser operation? Thank you, Madam Chair, for this question.
Response to this question, I'll also turn over to Admiral Patterson to see if she wants to expand on this. What I would say categorically throughout Operation Laser, our women leaders and members of the Canadian Armed Forces have featured prominently in absolutely every aspect of the Canadian Armed Forces response, whether it's deployment into long-term care facilities, the advice that's being provided to other government departments. Canadian Rangers comprise both women and men. They've surged into our communities to help vulnerable Canadians in their time of need. And so I cannot think of a force element that has been employed as part of Operation Laser in which women have not featured prominently. I'll just turn it over to Admiral Patterson to see if she'd like to expand on that as well.
Yes, thank you. No, we have had women integrated fully throughout the whole task force. Out of those 24,000 people, there have been women equally represented in all the different domains of work. And apart from that, I have nothing further to add.
I will move now to my second question. In the north of Quebec, the Rangers played a crucial role in the support that was offered in their communities. Can you give us some information on the importance of the Rangers over this whole pandemic time?
President.
Answer. Thank you, Madam Chair, for this question.
Absolutely right that the Canadian Rangers have featured prominently in the Canadian Armed Forces response to help Canadians throughout this pandemic. You referred specifically to Canadian Ranger support in the province of Quebec. Of course, we mobilized Rangers to the regions of Nunavik, Basse-Côte-Nord, amongst others, to provide critical logistic support, facilitate the delivery of humanitarian aid, and to help with the establishment of testing sites. That's essentially what we've seen across other regions of Canada as well. in the first wave of this pandemic, Canadian Rangers deployed to a number of their local communities. They were able to help reinforce some of the messages around public health measures and provide to us a better sense of the needs of those communities so that we could be more responsive to Canadians.
I could add, what were the reactions within the communities? How did the communities respond to the intervention of the Rangers? Thank you again, Madam Chair. Answer.
Universally, what we find with our Canadian Rangers and their communities, they are very integrated in their local communities. They are highly respected because of the training that they receive, because of their service to Canada. Often, as is the case, our Canadian Rangers take on leadership roles in their community in terms of governance of their respective communities. And so they've been very warmly received across Canada throughout this pandemic.
Alors, merci pour
Well, thank you very much for your answers. And that will be all for me, Madam Chair.
Then, Monsieur Brunel-Duceppe, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to thank our witnesses today for being here with us for such important questions. And I would like to start quickly. I'm very curious, and I haven't heard anything. I'm wondering, in the laser operation in Quebec, can you tell us how many military have gotten infected with COVID-19 in the long-term care homes in Quebec? Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question.
To our Surgeon General, as your question is specific to the number of CAF personnel that have fallen ill in long-term care facilities. Overall, across both Quebec and the province of Ontario, it was just over 50, I believe 55 that contracted COVID-19 as a result of their service in long-term care facilities. Major General Bilodeau might be able to provide additional granularity in the province of Quebec.
Oui, merci, Madame Chair.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. Well, yes, it was 55, the total number for long-term care homes in, I think it was 40 in Quebec and 15 in Ontario that did contract the disease in their service. Well, yes, we can get you those numbers. Well, that would be much appreciated. It was 55 military that did get COVID-19. Did any of them get the very serious form, or did they have to be hospitalized, for example? Madam Chair, thank you for the question. Well, within the 55 who did develop COVID-19 because of their work within the long-term care homes, those 55 did recover without any important side effects. We have been following up on those people, and we have been following all of the military that have been affected, and we will continue to do so to make sure that they will remain in good health. Thank you. Well, I was wondering if there were any that had to be hospitalized, because if it were the case in another wave or of this pandemic or in another pandemic that they do need to be in long-term care homes, and if they were to get infected, would the Canadian Forces be ready to treat them, to take care of them? Madam Chair, answer. Well, right now we don't have any military hospitals in Canada, so any hospital care will depend on civilian care. So this is a partnership that we will get that care. Though for those 55 military that were affected with their mission, none had to be hospitalized. Thank you. Was there a protocol to be followed before the pandemic? Madam Chair, could you please repeat your question? Was there any protocol set in place before the pandemic for such situations? For example, if in a military operation who was coming to help people in long-term care homes, and if they were to have any military that were to contract the disease, was there a protocol set up, something ahead of time? Answer. Well, we'd have a long-term partnership set up with all of the civilian health care services across Canada where we have our bases, whether it's for hospital or for preventive services or surgeries. So we have a partnership that has been set up for over 20 years. So that does allow us to be able to give access to the military for the health that they need and what they would need. Thank you. But the fact that pandemic, well, we haven't seen such a thing in our lifetime. We haven't seen such a thing where there was a worldwide pandemic that was such a disaster at all levels. Does that protocol that has been in place for 20 years, do you think that there should be changes brought forward so that at some point our military may have to come back and intervene in long-term homes or in other situations of deployment? Because at that point, should we not change the protocol or at least make adjustments?
Madame la Présidente, c'est bien évident en fait que...
Madam Chair, obviously, such a case as this one brings us to question many of our dogmas and lessons learned. So we are trying to learn some lessons from this experience in order to enhance our reaction to any next crisis. And this is no exception. And my colleague will probably be able to provide a more detailed answer.
Madam Chair, I have not much further to add on that particular point. Of course, once we're able to reflect as we go through this pandemic on what we've learned through our operations in support of Canada, our Chief of Defence Staff will provide advice to the government in terms of the apportionment of resources and how we're organized to deal with similar threats to Canada and Canadians in the future.
No more time is left. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I'd certainly like to start by expressing thanks of New Democrats on behalf of all Canadians for Canadian Forces' responsive role in this pandemic and keeping our international operations going, as well as aiding domestic authorities. I want to continue on the question of resources, and I have expressed my concerns many times in this committee that the operational budget of the Canadian Armed Forces has barely maintained, with the inflation rate in Canada, barely maintained a pace that would allow the continuation of all the operations. And now this year we've had extraordinary operations added on top of that. And so my question is, to the knowledge of our witnesses, has the Canadian Armed Forces received any additional and supplemental funding to help take care of these extra duties that they've been assigned during the pandemic?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. I'll have to return to the committee with a detailed written response in terms of the precise numbers. As was the case, I think, with all government departments that have had to mobilize in support of Canadians as part of the COVID-19 response, there was a supplemental request for resources. The actual details of that, I will have to return to you with a written response.
Thank you. Very much appreciate seeing that response. In this first round of questions, I want to focus on the assistance that was provided in long-term care by the Canadian Forces. And we had quite frankly shocking reports that were issued under the name of Brigadier General Carpentier and Brigadier General Miokowski. And I wonder if today we could just put on the record the main findings of those reports of what Canadian Forces were confronted with when they were asked to help out in long-term care homes in Ontario and Quebec.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. I'll also turn to my colleagues who will provide supplemental responses. Of course, as our Canadian Armed Forces members deployed into these facilities, they were mobilized by Canada and Canadians for a reason. It certainly was because of the gravity of the situation in those long-term care homes. What they had identified, and I'll just report in general terms, they had discovered in a number of facilities, and I should also note that each of the facilities were different. And so this is not a generalization on all 50 plus facilities that the Canadian Armed Forces proudly served in alongside our civilian colleagues, but in some of the facilities. They had seen, for example, non-adherence to policies related to infection prevention and control. In some cases, they had discovered inadequate training and medical supplies for the facility staff. They had observed deficiencies in long-term care infrastructure. There were concerns with the standard of care in some facilities that were being delivered in support of Canadians or vulnerable residents. And of course, there were high rates of staff illness. And as a result of that, in some cases, absenteeism that had exacerbated the conditions in some of those long-term care facilities. I'll just turn it over now to the Surgeon General to see if he has additional feedback, and then we'll go over to the Commander of the Health Services Group.
Madam Chair. So yeah, I mean, to summarize those points, I guess what was noticed is basically patient and staff safety considerations and concerns, and that needed to be addressed. You know, in healthcare, security of patients and staff is paramount, obviously. And this is a responsibility of every single healthcare providers or member of the healthcare teams to, you know, when they notice those challenges, to raise them, to identify them, and make sure that they are being addressed.
And when this operation came to a close, and I am assuming that I'm not wrong in saying we're no longer providing assistance in any of those homes, who was responsibility turned over to from the Canadian Forces for the activities that we had undertaken on behalf of the long-term care? So who did these simply go back to the existing long-term care, or were there anyone else providing resources to deal with these challenges?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. In terms of the departure of Canadian Armed Forces personnel from those facilities, we had established beforehand with each of the provinces what we refer to as transition criteria that needed to be met and needed to be agreed upon between the Canadian Armed Forces and those provinces. First and foremost, before Canadian Armed Forces teams left those facilities, both the provincial Ministry of Health and long-term care needed to assess and signal to us that CAF support was not required in those specific facilities. And then a number of other criteria had to be satisfied. For example, we needed to have confidence that the facility had the integral capacity to manage the situation of the respective facility, that the infection prevention and control measures that I referred to earlier had been addressed, established, and they were being enforced, that staffing levels were sufficient, and that those transition criteria needed to be codified in an exchange of written instruments or letters between the province and the Canadian Armed Forces. And so to answer your question, Madam Chair, in many cases, the Canadian Armed Forces, when they vacated facilities, of course, it was at the request of the respective provinces, and they handed those facilities back over to the facility management themselves. You'll hear some discussion about the Canadian Red Cross surging in to the province of Quebec, for example. They were directed to other facilities that required supports outside of those that the Canadian Armed Forces had occupied.
Given that we're now seeing
Mr.
a very
Garrison, I'm afraid.
Oh.
Sorry about that. All right.
Well, thank you very much.
Right. Madame Gallant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, through you to the Surgeon General, where do the Canadian Armed Forces personnel fit in terms of precedence for access to COVID-19 vaccination?
So,
Go ahead, Surgeon General.
yeah, I was gonna ask General Kedju to do the initial comments, and I may add anything I guess required.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. Right now, we are working very closely, of course, with the Public Health Agency of Canada as part of the vaccine rollout. They are considering right now, from a national perspective, the prioritization of the rollout of the vaccine, whether it be to vulnerable populations, first responders, and that sort of thing. Those decisions have yet to be made and will be brought forward by the Public Health Agency to elected officials in the days and weeks to come. Of course, the Canadian Armed Forces will be factored in to that order of march or precedence as the vaccine is rolled out. Internal to the Department of National Defense and the Canadian Armed Forces, we are undergoing a very similar exercise in terms of recommended prioritization of the vaccination for D&D and Canadian Armed Forces members, and that advice will be brought forward for the consideration of our Chief Defense Staff.
Okay, the federal government has said that vaccination against COVID will be optional. Is that the case for CAF personnel?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. That is something that our Chief of Defense Staff is currently considering and will be taking additional advice from his health advisors. Surgeon General, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, so the discussion is ongoing, as Major General Kedju said, and I'm there to provide advice, medical advice into that discussion.
Okay, so for those who choose not to be vaccinated, if there's a choice, how will their deployments, promotions, or requests for transfers be impacted? Now, given that you haven't made those decisions yet, I'll hold off on that, but that's something we will be looking into. Will all Canadian Armed Forces members receive the same brand of vaccination?
Madam Chair, thank you very much for the question. I think the Public Health Agency is working through right now the number and the stocks of the vaccine from various manufacturers. And so it's not yet evident to us what specific vaccine will be made available to Canadian Armed Forces personnel. I think the Surgeon General might have additional amplifying information on that.
Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair. So what we don't know yet also is which vaccine is going to be the most effective for our specific population. You know, we have fairly young adults in good health for most of them. And we don't know, which vaccine will be the best one for this. So it's too early to say now which vaccine would be used.
Will reservists get the same order of precedence for receiving the vaccine as regular forces?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. Of course, as the Chief of Defense Staff considers the rollout of the vaccine internal to the CAF, he will be thinking equally about regular force, reserve force, and Canadian Ranger members. In terms of the actual sequencing of that rollout, as indicated, that is still being considered and analyzed by staff. Recommended.
Thank you. What number of CAF personnel contracted COVID from their deployments in CAF overseas operations? Oh, we might want to stop the timer, madam.
Madam Chair, did we just lose all our witnesses?
Oh, I didn't know my questions were that paralyzing.
Yeah, I'm on it right now. We've got this one contact where all the witnesses.
Oh, redundancy. Do I need to re-ask the question? Start my time over. Oh, okay. Are they back?
Madam Chair, it's Trevor Cadgy here, just checking in, doing a communications check.
What number of CAF personnel contracted COVID from their deployments in CAF overseas operations?
Madam Chair, I'm going to have to return to the committee with a precise number. It's a relatively small figure in terms of the number of Canadian Armed Forces members that have contracted COVID while serving overseas.
What number of CAF members have died as a direct result of being infected with COVID-19?
Madam Chair, no CAF members have died as a result of contracting COVID-19. I just ask the Surgeon General if he wants to comment on the severity of the disease among some members.
Yes, Madam Chair, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Good. So overall, 6 members required hospitalization, and all others were treated through out service, I guess, capacity.
I'm afraid. You're welcome, Madame Gallant. Okay, next, Mr. Bagnall.
Can you unmute yourself, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too would like to give a big thank you to the Canadian military. Your job is difficult and dangerous in all times in your efforts to protect us, but particularly now. And so please pass on our gratitude. My first question was asked by Mr. Robillard already, because I was interested in the Rangers as well. So thank you, Mr. Robillard. The rest of my questions are, and of course, it was about the Rangers who, as you know, in the military, provide an instrumental service that in some cases no one else could provide. So a big, big thank you to the Canadian Rangers across the Arctic and the North for that. The rest of my questions come from the excellent research done by the Library of Parliament. And perhaps Madame DuPont could pass on my gratitude to the great and professional work they always do for committees and for members of Parliament. I wonder if you could, Major General, if you could just update us on our mission in Latvia, as much as you can without threatening Canada's security, and then any changes that have occurred to that as a result of COVID.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. We're also grateful for the support communicated to our Canadian Armed Forces members, and I'll be very happy to pass that on. As I had indicated in my opening remarks, initially early in the pandemic, as we tried to learn about the disease that was confronting us and Canadians and the world, frankly, the Chief of Defense Staff made a decision to temporarily contract the global posture of the Canadian Armed Forces. You specifically asked about our mission in Latvia, which is known as Operation Reassurance. As you know, specifically, we have deployed what we call an enhanced forward presence battle group. Interestingly, as the Chief of Defense Staff looked at having to contract the global posture, given the situation in Latvia, our confidence based on the Chief of Defense Staff's advice that he was getting from his medical advisors, he made a determination that Canada was able to continue its contribution relatively unimpeded in Latvia. And so throughout this crisis, the CAF support to the Enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group has continued, of course, respecting some of the public health measures that are in place locally in Latvia. We had to contract the force a little bit more restrictively in other places like Iraq, for example, where the COVID situation was not under control. There are other factors in Iraq, such as the geopolitical and security situation, that also forced us to reassess our posture in the region. And Ukraine, I would mention as well, specifically as one of the missions that required us to contract the force a little bit more, again, because of the uncontrolled transmission of COVID-19 and the challenges that country's having. In all cases where it's been possible, we've reinvigorated our collaboration, operations, and training in support of our allies.
Thank you. You mentioned Iraq. Could you just let us know what the deployment of the 400 or so troops that have been brought home are doing now?
So the Canadian Armed Forces members that were deployed to Iraq, essentially there's I would classify their contribution into two main categories. First would be in support of combined Joint Task Force Operation Inherent Resolve, which is the defeat ISIS mission that the Canadian Armed Forces has contributed to. That mission has contracted significantly in recent months. There's some low-level collaboration and capacity building training that's ongoing. As well, the Canadian Armed Forces continues to contribute to the NATO mission in Iraq, albeit again at a more restricted posture. Troops that came out of that joint operations area returned to Canada. In many cases, they got some well-deserved leave, and they've resumed force generation activities with the respective services.
Thank you. My time is up, I think.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bagnall. Monsieur Brunel-Duceppe, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We just talked about deployments overseas, and for the Canadian Armed Forces, you responded to a UN request for medical aid and food supply on behalf of the WHO's International Food Program. Were the Canadian Armed Forces able to respond to humanitarian aid in response to the pandemic? Madam Chair, thank you very much for the question.
Forces responded with strength and pride to the request to provide humanitarian assistance to Latin America and the Caribbean. In fact, we are one of the only military forces, one of the only countries that was distributing medical material to those countries in the Latin American and the Caribbean basin. So that support was very highly valued. Of course, we are working in harmony amongst our other allies to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian assistance and medical material to other countries around the globe. Clearly, the Canadian Armed Forces does not have the capacity to handle that global demand independently. And so we are working to cohere our activities closely with allies.
So I would like to congratulate you for that. And I wanted to know that if for the next requests or future requests, are the Canadian Armed Forces able to respond to those requests in relation to the pandemic?
Merci, Madame la Présidente, pour la question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question.
As we go through this pandemic, of course, we continue to learn about the requirements that we have domestically and internationally. What we are seeing, of course, is a very significant precipitous increase in the transmission of this disease internationally. And so we will continue to monitor the requirements of the Canadian Armed Forces and Canada and Canadians, as well as our allies, and within resources. And as missions are assigned to us by the Government of Canada, we will work alongside allies to satisfy that demand globally.
Thank you. Mr. Garrison, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd just like to return to where I left off in the last round of questioning about the role of Canadian Forces in long-term care homes, and just to say it again, that once again, that I am immensely proud as a Canadian of the role that the Canadian Forces played in those long-term care homes. However, embarrassed as a Canadian I am that we had to ask the Canadian Forces to step into those long-term care homes. So my next question about long-term care homes was, what are the lessons learned for the Canadian Forces about what we need to do to prepare, perhaps to have to intervene again during the COVID epidemic, as we are seeing enormous spikes in the number of new infections? So what kind of training or equipment needs have we identified for the Canadian Forces if there will have to be another intervention before we get to a vaccine?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. The Canadian Armed Forces, we always strive to be a learning organization, to be able to dynamically capture, reflect on, and share our lessons learned and observations from these types of operations. Operation Laser is no exception to that. And we have certainly learned a number of lessons from our operations inside of long-term care facilities. But also in other jurisdictions in support of Canadians. For example, specific to long-term care, to address your question, we learned quite a bit throughout this pandemic in terms of how to properly don, use, and doff or take off medical grade personal protective equipment. We've learned about some of the dynamics of mobilizing CAF health services personnel to support some of our vulnerable populations. We've learned how to collaborate with different agencies in different levels of government. And so what we've already done is we've taken those lessons, we've shared them throughout the force, and as we remain postured for additional potential requests for assistance, those troops will be going in, having benefited from the tough lessons learned by some of their teammates. I think the Surgeon General as well, just he might want to amplify one of those points.
Yes, Madam Chair. So in addition to that, we're obviously following the science and the scientific community findings related to COVID. And we know a lot more now about COVID compared to what we knew in the spring. So obviously the mode of transmission, in what type of environment the transmission is more likely, and this will inform how we prepare our troops for potential additional tasks.
Thank you very much. I know Canadian Forces.
I'm afraid your time is up, Mr. Garrison.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bazan, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank our witnesses for attending today, and I want to thank the great work that all of you have been doing on making sure that Canadians are all taken care of during this pandemic, and the role that all members of the Canadian Armed Forces have played in both force protection as well as protecting Canadians. Just want to follow up more on what Mr. Garrison was just saying, and about preparation and potential use of Canadian Armed Forces in the next go around of this pandemic. I know, for example, the Mayor of Winnipeg, the Chief of Opaskwayak Cree Nation are making requests here in Manitoba for military assistance. Has any of that filtered up to Canadian Armed Forces levels yet? And whether or not you are prepared to go if required?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. We are absolutely plugged in to the situation across the nation. We are working very closely with Public Safety, the Government Operations Center, and other government departments, Public Health Agency, Health, Indigenous Services Canada. In fact, the Canadian Armed Forces, along with some of our other federal government partners, spent most of the weekend talking about the situation in Manitoba and many other jurisdictions throughout the country. So we are quite in tune to the evolving situation. To answer your specific question about the province of Manitoba, we have engaged in interactions with some of our provincial partners to better understand what the requirements and needs are. And if a request for federal government assistance or Canadian Armed Forces assistance comes across, our Chief of Defence Staff will be prepared to provide advice to our minister, and if tasked, to dynamically task troops to help Canadians in their time of need.
Thank you. Now, one of the things that I've always been quite proud of is how Canadian Armed Forces started down the path of mental readiness. And during Afghanistan, we had the Road to Mental Readiness program. I was a little bit concerned when I read in the media last week that Major Carolyn Martin, who was working in the long-term care situation in Ontario, and she was testifying at commission, and she was talking about how devastated members of the Canadian Armed Forces were when they entered some of these facilities, the squalor, the miscare of residents and our loved ones. So I was wondering if there is being, again, R2R being provided to our troops for those that were in long-term care and are still somewhat devastated from what they experienced, as well as being prepared to go in again if needed.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. I'm going to start answering this from a chain of command perspective, and then I'm going to hand it over to the Surgeon General to talk about specific medical supports that are being mobilized for our members. Certainly, we all recognize that Canadian Armed Forces members are often deployed into some very difficult environments overseas as part of some of our international operations, and from time to time here in Canada as well. It's why the military force of last resort is mobilized, and long-term care was particularly challenging because of course we are Canadians first and foremost. And we do not like to see fellow Canadians suffering. And so we deploy as a priority in support of those vulnerable Canadians. What I will say in terms of what we try to do proactively to mentally prepare Canadian Armed Forces members for these types of operations. First of all, we aim always in an all echelon to try to destigmatize mental illness, to make sure that Canadian Armed Forces members know that, first of all, and if they have challenges, they can raise those concerns with their chain of command. Leadership and cohesion factors into this significantly. And you've referred to the Road to Mental Readiness program that helps to better visualize that environment to ensure that arousal control and different techniques are put into place for CAF members when they operate in those environments. I'll hand it over now to our Surgeon General to talk about some of the medical specific supports and psychosocial supports that are available to CAF members.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. So obviously, prevention is key in mental health, and when exposed to challenging situations like the long-term care facility, this was a critical aspect of preparation of our troops. And the Road to Mental Readiness program, that is an existing program for many years, has been tailored to the specific needs of those troops going in long-term care facilities. So we were able to make sure that specific environment was captured, and therefore having a customized preparation of our troops. During the deployment itself, we had social workers that were deployed and made available on a 24/7 basis for all of our members who were deployed in the long-term care facilities. The units also deployed chaplains that are part of the support team, if you will, and help addressing some of the challenges that our members could have been facing. Obviously, our 24/7, the telephone support were still available for our members during that time, as well as our peer support program, the OSIS program. And we were able to basically provide the care and the support that those members needed during the mission. Post-mission, we put in place another Road to Mental Readiness program to basically close the loop from the prevention prior to the mission. And then we also instituted a post-deployment screening process by which we'll be able to identify any members who might not have been captured during the deployment or immediately after, and usually do that 3 to 6 months after the deployment. So this is part of our ongoing approach to basically screen early and identify early members who may be suffering from mental health challenges. And in addition to that, we're conducting a research study trying to identify the challenges that our members are going through and have been through, with the aim of trying to learn how we can better prepare them for future missions similar to this one.
Would that study include both those that have been deployed in op laser and those that have been pretty much confined to quarters because of force protection measures taken by the Chief of Defense Staff?
Yes, Madam Chair. So like any good study, we're trying to build a control group that will be basically allowing us to compare how that environment was more challenging than another one and trying to identify if there's specific trends related to that environment.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Spengman.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. And I'd like to start by thanking our witnesses, our team of senior Canadian Forces officers for being with us today and for their distinguished service. And through them, also thank the women and men in uniform who are serving alongside them with particular gratitude for the, for the work the Canadian Forces are doing in helping us get through the pandemic. I'd like to start with a question to take us back to some earlier discussion on training and perhaps start with Major General Cadieux. To what extent is pandemic response training part of the Canadian Forces training package at the moment, maybe from the very basic first steps, basic training, up to more advanced training and senior ranks? And to the extent that there are gaps, what would be your vision in terms of strengthening that training?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. The Canadian Armed Forces, of course, our role, our mission is to defend Canada and Canadians against all threats. And so, as our Canadian Armed Forces members progress through their training, they need to be prepared for up to and including general purpose combat operations, which, generally speaking, from a military perspective, that covers an entire spectrum of activities that they might be called upon to do. And in the course of that training, they will be exposed to and they will receive tools that can be applied in a domestic setting or paradigm, such as what we have seen for Operation Laser, the Canadian Armed Forces response to the COVID-19 situation. For example, when our Canadian Armed Forces members deploy on operations abroad, they have to deal with local populations, with other government agencies and departments and partners. They are often called upon to deliver humanitarian aid and assistance, provide logistics and transportation support. And so, as part of that general purpose combat training that they receive a suite of tools that can be applied for activities such as this.
Thank you very much for that. Looking at the deployability of Canadian forces in the context of a perhaps continuing pandemic for the longer term, is there any guidance that's coming our way from NATO and the UN with respect to deployments, peace operations? And to the extent that this is still at the beginning, is there room for Canada and specifically the Canadian forces to input into such frameworks?
Madam Chair, thank you very much for the question. Of course, as you indicate, globally, we are all learning as we go through this pandemic together how it's going to evolve and what the potential implications to our allies and partnerships might be. What I will say that with strength, once again, after initially contracting the force to privilege support to Canadians, which remains in place, we have been able to resume almost all of our operations in support of our allies, including NATO and the United Nations deployed abroad. So we have approximately 2,000 Canadian Armed Forces members deployed on approximately 20 missions around the globe. Activities and operations that are going to be contemplated specific to the pandemic, we will continue to watch for those. And if there's an opportunity for the Canadian Armed Forces to be engaged, our Chief of Defense Staff will provide advice to our minister.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask a question about the reserves and specifically reserve units that are located in urban centers. To what extent has the pandemic impacted their work, their training, their readiness?
The reserves in the Canadian Armed Forces, Madam Chair, have featured prominently in the Canadian Armed Forces response as part of Operation Laser. In the first wave, when it was unclear how much of the Canadian Armed Forces would be required to be mobilized to support Canadians, reservists were offered full-time, what we refer to as Class C service. Almost 7,000 reservists took that call, and they played a very fundamental role in a number of our operations, including long-term care support, especially in the province of Ontario. And so, to answer your question, what we've seen is certainly a number of reservists answering the call to support Canada in its time of need. They've had to undergo the same preparations and training that the regular force counterparts have had to in terms of using personal protective equipment, observing and respecting and enforcing public health measures, integrating into operations. And so any reservist that integrates into an op laser a function or operation, they will undergo the same preparations as their regular force counterparts.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
First, I would just like to advise the committee that Mr. Troy Crosby, ADM Material, has joined us at this time. All right, so we could go. Did you have a little statement you wanted to make, ADM Crosby?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll go on to Mr. Dowdo, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and I want to thank the witnesses as well for their presentation, and certainly all the men and women of our Canadian Armed Forces. I'm fortunate I have a military base in my riding in Simcoe Grey, a base board, and I have the opportunity to thank many of them in person. So just a couple questions actually pertaining to the base, if I could. On April 15th, or April 5th, I mean, the Globe and Mail reported that the Canadian Forces Base Board would be the headquarters for the Joint Force Central Fight Against COVID-19. Now, the minister did confront me a little bit later. I wish it was earlier because I had all kinds of concerns from local residents as all the military seemed to be coming in a little town. So I was getting lots of concerns as people were stressed about the pandemic and wondering what it meant. So maybe further on that ministries could reach out to the local MP and give them a heads up. That would be certainly appreciated. But anyway, I just wondering if I could have, they said approximately 400. What is the actual number of troops that were stationed at Base Borden for Operation Laser?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. I'll have to get back to you with a written response of the specific number of Canadian Armed Forces troops that were readied in support of Operation Laser at Borden. What I would say is that base, as well as many others throughout the country, has played a pivotal role in allowing our Canadian Armed Forces members to stage from which to conduct operations in support of Canadians. As much as it's possible, we've tried to undertake every measure to ensure local authorities are kept abreast of Canadian Armed Forces activities and what they might mean to the local communities and the regions that they're serving in.
Thank you very much for that answer. Just to follow up, if I might, I'm sure you had isolation protocols at that particular base that were there, and I'm just wondering if you could elaborate on that. And I know earlier we talked, and I think it's fantastic that you've had this partnership for 20 years with the local hospitals. We have two, I guess, which would be your catchment area, RVH and Stevenson Memorial, who work hand in hand. So are they kept abreast of all the latest happenings, like as we get more military personnel in place? Number one, and number two is I'm wondering if you're reaching out as well to local municipalities. I know for a fact that Angus is part of it now, and there is going to be a COVID testing center. So is there a COVID testing center on base for your personnel or our military at this time? And if not, do you work in conjunction to move these items forward?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. I'll turn it over to the Surgeon General to talk about how the Canadian Armed Forces is organized for COVID testing. But in terms of your question about engagement with local communities, our Chief of Defense Staff expects his base commanders to maintain robust communications and relationships with their local and regional interlocutors. And so that is a dialogue that is happening continuously between uniform leaders and the community leaders with which they serve. And so our Chief of Defense Staff certainly expects his subordinate commanders to keep local officials apprised of developments in the Canadian Armed Forces response as part of Operation Laser and any significant activities that might have an impact on the communities that they're serving in. Surgeon General will be able to comment on how we're organized for COVID testing.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. So we are growing our integral capability for testing in the Canadian Armed Forces. So we have a growing number of testing equipment that we're starting to distribute on our bases and wings, on our ships in some of our deployment. I don't have the exact information though as to if we have one equipment in Borden or not, but this is certainly something we can get back to you on in writing after today's discussion.
Okay, thank you. I'd really like to know, probably for all bases, whether or not they have testing ability for our military there personnel, because I think it's important. If not, that they certainly have to buddy up with somebody beside to make sure that those options are available, and to make sure that they have the opportunity to test and get quick results. So I think that's very important. So I know I want to thank you too about the connection with the local hospitals. I will say that often they are frustrated with the fact that some of the local hospitals come up with some suggestions and perhaps don't go back in. Could be definitely part of the problem that we've heard earlier is just lack of funding through the government to upgrade some of those problems that are out there, whether it be mental health or what have you, because we don't have 24/7 access at many of our hospitals. So I don't know if you have a comment on that side of it.
Madam Chair, thank you for that. I don't have a specific comment on that other than to maintain our commitment to maintain that active engagement between uniformed leaders and community leaders that they're serving with in our communities across the country.
On to Mr. Baker, please.
Thank you, Chair. And Major General Cadieux, Major General Bilodeau, Rear Admiral Patterson, Mr. Crosby, thank you very much for being here to present to us and to answer questions by the Defense Committee today. In my community of the Etobicoke Centre, we are mourning the loss of 42 residents to COVID-19 at the Eatonville Long-Term Care Centre. And as devastating as this is, the death toll would have been much higher if it had not been for the members of the Canadian Armed Forces who were deployed there to care for people in my community, to care for my constituents. So on behalf of my constituents and my community, I'd like to start by thanking the Canadian Armed Forces for serving in our long-term care homes. And I would particularly like to thank, and I would ask you to pass along my thanks if it's possible, to my thanks to the Canadian Armed Forces members who cared for and who saved lives of my constituents in Etobicoke Centre. I would also like to thank you for something else. In May, the Canadian Armed Forces prepared a report describing horrific and abusive conditions at the 5 long-term care homes in Ontario where they were posted at the time. And the horrific allegations described in that report, in my view, should alarm every single Canadian. The stories, the examples of mistreatment and abuse described by the soldiers stationed at these homes, I think, are simply unacceptable, and I think all Canadians find them unacceptable. So as we rightly focus on the numbers and the statistics and some of the events, I think it's also important that we remember that behind these examples are human beings and our fellow citizens. And they were mothers, they were fathers, they were brothers and sisters, they were Canadians, and they deserve better. And as a result of your report, 4 other MPs and I, who represent the constituencies in Ontario in which the CAF was serving in long-term care, wrote to Premier Ford and Prime Minister Trudeau calling for a number of steps, including calling for national standards for long-term care. Many other caucus colleagues joined that call, and in the speech on the throne, the government announced that it would be working with the provinces to do just that, to establish national standards for long-term care. So on behalf of my community, I would like to thank the Canadian Armed Forces for caring for and saving the lives of my constituents in Etobicoke Centre. But I would also like to thank the members of the Canadian Armed Forces for documenting what they discovered. This has enabled awareness, which has led to action and led to government committing to establishing national standards. And when this is done, I think this will make a difference for seniors for generations to come. So my thanks to you and all the members of the Canadian Armed Forces who were involved in Operation Laser. My question would be, could you share with us some of the most troubling conditions that the Canadian Armed Forces discovered in our long-term care homes?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. I will turn over to our Commander of Canadian Health Services here shortly. We will certainly convey your gratitude to Canadian Armed Forces members that served in those facilities. Before I hand over to Admiral Patterson and our Surgeon General, I would just reinforce that in addition to our commitment, our obligation to reporting what we see, which you should expect of your Canadian Armed Forces members at all occasions, is a healthy bias to action. And so immediately upon discovering issues, Canadian Armed Forces members immediately intervened to correct any activities and work alongside civilian colleagues to provide compassionate care to vulnerable Canadians. I'll turn it over now to Admiral Patterson to comment on some of the additional issues that were discovered in long-term care facility.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. So just to piggyback on what General Cadieux has said, while there was no specific issue typical for all of the different installations in Ontario, we can certainly say that if I was to globalize and say it was adherence to policies that helped ensure that our most vulnerable residents were actually properly cared for. And of course, within the actual report, as you know, there are very specific examples, but in general, adherence to policies. I think I also have to point out the fact that we did go into those homes that were basically in crisis and at the invitation of the provincial government. And we worked very, very closely and in partnership with both the management and the leadership of the homes, as well as with the government. And I can tell you that when we were pointing out issues with policies or with standard of care delivery, that everybody was very receptive to making the changes that were necessary. But with that, you also said other issues. We talk about standards of care, and as you know, we were there to support the local facilities, but also as military professionals to achieve the mission that was set out for us, but also as healthcare professionals, we have obligations to point out cases where there may be harm to our residents. So again, the four themes that we had to look at was lack of adherence to policies, inadequate staffing, or even training of the care providers within the facility, and also some challenges in the infrastructure. Surgeon General, would you like to add anything else?
Yeah, just to sum up, Madam Chair, it comes down to patient safety again and staff safety. And, I think those are the common themes and the reason why we had to document, intervene, and make sure that those concerns were being addressed.
Thank you very much.
Brunel Duceppe, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm pleased to hear, in fact, that what we need is not necessarily national standards, but health transfers, the health transfers that the provinces have been demanding for a long time. But I'm not here to politicize this. It seems that difficult decisions had to be taken in many different fields, and you too have had to make very difficult decisions in the armed forces. Among these difficult decisions, you've had to cancel classes, including training classes that could have led to career progression. This means that you have fewer trained soldiers and fewer trained officers who, in turn, could have trained other candidates. So my question is the following. What has been the impact of these course cancellations on the armed forces? Thank you, Madam Chair, for this question.
Pandemic, of course, has affected everyone globally, and many Canadians in the Canadian Armed Forces, of course, are not spared of that, and it's required us to make some tough choices, as you've indicated, in order to first of all privilege the health of our members. When the Chief of Defence Staff ordered initially that Canadian Armed Forces members disperse, we activated what we refer to as our business continuity plans to better understand the environment that we are operating in and how serious this illness was going to be. It forced us in the short term to stop what we refer to some of our force generation or our training activities. When we committed to operations in support of Operation Laser, in particular, the ECAF support and long-term care facilities, it also required us to hold in abeyance some of our additional training that would have been conducted at that time. And so to respond to your question about what the impacts of the cancellations to training are going to be, I would say two things. First of all, there will be a delay in some cases to the professional development that we deliver to Canadian Armed Forces members. And depending on how long this pandemic takes, it's going to impact our ability to increase our training throughput to what it once was. But it also speaks, and this is my second point, to the requirement to, in a responsible way, while ensuring that first and foremost we are mobilizing to support Canadians in their time of need, that when we can do it responsibly, respect public health measures, social distancing, the use of non-medical masks and personal protective equipment, that the Canadian Armed Forces does need to return to its training activities so that we have a ready force that's prepared to respond, not just domestically, but also to protect this country against external threats as well.
Mr. Garrison, please.
Thank you very much.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. La question sur le rôle des forces armées dans la distribution des vaccins. Alors, nous savons qu'un vaccin est proche, mais qu'auparavant, il va falloir exercer une grande discipline. This is the interpreter's mistake. I apologize.
And so, as I was saying, it'll require a great deal of discipline among all Canadians for us to adhere to health directives until we get to the vaccines. So my question is about the scope of the role that's being envisioned for the Canadian Forces in distribution of vaccines. And my hope would be that part of that will be to provide assistance in rural, remote, and northern areas where underlying health conditions mean the population is more vulnerable and where medical facilities are more limited. So I would like to ask about the scope of the role of Canadian Forces in distributing vaccines.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. The Canadian Armed Forces is working very closely with the Public Health Agency and other federal government partners as part of the COVID-19 vaccine task force. We have already committed Canadian Armed Forces members and leaders as part of this effort. Currently, we have a number of CAF members that are operating out of Public Health Agency to establish what will be known as a National Operations Center. That will be the command and control node or the hub that will coordinate the distribution of a COVID-19 vaccine across the country, including in northern and remote communities. Secondly, our Chief of Defense Staff has dispatched some of his best planners to work with the Public Health Agency to develop a logistics support plan that, will, for all intents and purposes, will be the maneuver plan to support the delivery of the vaccine across the country. Beyond that, I believe the Minister of Health, the President of the Public Health Agency, in short order, will be coming forward with an update on the status of the actual logistics support plan, the distribution plan that's going to be put into place. In terms of the Canadian Armed Forces' role in that, we will continue to collaborate with the Public Health Agency to better understand what the needs of the CAF might be, and our Chief of Defense Staff will provide advice to the Minister. I will say that, though, to address your specific point on supports to northern remote communities, our Chief of Defense Staff has made it clear that throughout this pandemic, we're to be prepared to provide supports to those communities when called upon.
And of course, given the important role on a day-to-day basis of the Canadian Forces and also in distribution of this vaccine, I would hope that Canadian Force members would be given a high priority for the vaccine. I was a bit disturbed by a question earlier, and I hope it wasn't a nod to the anti-vaxxers, but can you please reassure me that no consideration is being given to the idea that vaccinations against COVID-19 would be voluntary for Canadian Forces, that no one would be allowed to skip the vaccine except for medical reasons?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. This is an issue that's currently under consideration by our Chief of Defense Staff. We are only now learning about the types of vaccines that might be available. General Vance has issued direction to the Canadian Armed Forces, as has our Deputy Minister to the Department of National Defense, to come back to them with recommendations on how a vaccine might be rolled out internal to the Canadian Armed Forces, and he'll rely on his Surgeon General as well to provide advice in terms of the universality of that vaccination. And so that determination has not yet been made. It'll go in front of our Chief of Defense Staff. I'll just turn it over now to the Surgeon General to see if he wants to amplify anything on that response.
Madam Chair, I have nothing to add.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garrison. On to Mr. Bazan, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First and foremost, I want to say I'm very pleased that it is going to be the Canadian Armed Forces that are managing the logistics and the supply lines in moving the vaccines across the country. Nobody can do it better than the Canadian Armed Forces when it comes to getting things moved out in a timely manner and reliable. So I just want to say thanks for taking that leadership role. Now that we got Mr. Crosby with us, I did want to drill down a bit on how COVID's impacting supply lines for the Canadian Armed Forces, how everything from getting bullets and boots and uniforms to even toilet paper, which seems to be on the run again in all our stores. So I was wondering, Mr. Crosby, if you can just talk about how our suppliers to the Canadian Armed Forces are being impacted and how that is affecting the supplies that are required.
Madam Chair, thanks for the question, and I appreciate the committee's flexibility in allowing me to join late here today. I appreciate the opportunity to address some of these important questions. When it comes to supply chain, the way the spring played out was the Materiel Group really worked closely with the Canadian Armed Forces to determine what the critical fleet needs were, what our critical contracts were, looking at our available sparing and where we were from an activity level, the ability to support the activity levels that were being forecast at that point. In the beginning, we identified a reduced number of fleets that were important to the ongoing operations, the responses underway, and we were able to look at, again, supply and our ability to support over periods of 30, 60, 90, and as time went on further into the future. There were different approaches, there were different considerations for those fleets. We ran into some interesting circumstances that we wouldn't have foreseen. I'll give you a specific example. On our logistics support vehicle, wheeled light logistics support vehicle, we found that we were forecasting a shortage of a particular part of brake cylinder. Interestingly enough, those brake cylinders are sourced from northern Italy. Rather than finding ourselves in a bind, however, the combined team was able to look at the issues that we were having with the brake cylinders and apply an engineering solution that allowed us to ensure that the supply of parts remained unimpeded and the vehicles were available for Canadian Forces operations. The situation's different in other circumstances where moving parts and people, for example, field service representatives across international and even provincial boundaries, borders, has proven challenging at times. It remains challenging in certain cases where we have equipment coming from offshore, but we're able to.
So, Mr. Crosby, does that mean, though, I'm glad you're actually pointing this out, that international supplies are the ones that are being impacted, as I'm sure domestic as well, but does this, again, coming down to our own force generation, to our own control over our sovereignty, that those supply chains and those suppliers should be more closely aligned to supply lines within North America, particularly here in Canada?
The resilience of the supply chain really comes from our ability to hold sufficient spares and to have the repair and overhaul capacity that's required when it's needed. And our time frames looking out 30, 60, again, 90 days and beyond are sufficient that we can maintain our supply chains and haven't had any specific issues through the past 8 months of the COVID pandemic. When we look at our supply chain resilience in the longer term, there's a balance to be found there between warehousing sufficient spares for different operational circumstances, different operational tempos, the cost of that, and having second sources of supply, for example, or more assured sources of supply, either domestically or with allies. And through the pandemic response, I have to say that our ability to reach out internationally to our allies and work cooperatively with them has been key. to keeping those supplies moving. I'm happy to report that we haven't run into any issues.
Thank you, Mr. Crosby. Now on D&D and Canadian Armed Forces working on ongoing procurement projects, has COVID impacted things like the JSS, the AOPS program, getting ships built and rolled out in time? Has it impacted the selection of our next fighter jet? I know that the tenders are in. It's just a matter of making sure that everybody has a chance to digest that information and make the selection. But again, staffing resources have been limited, working from home with COVID-19 protocols, and then also even working on surface combatant design as that project continues to evolve. So, what type of impacts has COVID had on those procurement projects?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. I'll respond in two general categories. The first category would be those projects that are largely being advanced through work that takes place in office spaces. And yes, in the beginning, there was a little bit of a slowdown as we came to grips with working remotely and through new technologies. But generally, the projects that are advancing through the development of a request for proposal, such as the logistics vehicle modernization project or the remote piloted aircraft system projects, both of which have recently released significant portions of their draft request for proposal, those continue to advance. Similarly, the Future Fighter Capability project that has the proposals in hand since the summer has been able to advance. There are challenges there as we deal with a significant volume of classified information. Nevertheless, the team has found some really creative ways to ensure that we continue to move forward on those. I would see delays potentially in the order of weeks for any of those kinds of activities, not measurable in the long term. On the other hand, the projects that are in more of a production phase, and the question touched on some of the shipbuilding projects, those have been more challenging. I think we can all appreciate that the physical distancing requirements on board a ship under production or on board a submarine that's going through repair and overhaul has been more challenging, but it's been remarkable to see the shipbuilding industry in its response and finding solution, working with its labor force to find ways to continue to move work forward. It's been quite astonishing. And in fact, through the spring, we were holding weekly defense industry advisory group meetings with the shipyards and 50 participants. And they were quite readily sharing information on how best to respond and to continue to move forward. Other projects in a production type phase would include the fixed wing search and rescue project, of course, which is the aircraft being produced in Spain. Spain, Airbus in this case, as the aircraft manufacturer, did a phenomenal job of keeping the project moving forward according to its original timelines. But again, moving back and forth across international borders has been challenging. So we've actually made a deliberate choice there to patriate, to move to Comox, to Canada, some of the work that had originally been planned to occur in Spain so that we could get ahead of future waves and uncertainty with the COVID situation. It set us back a little bit, but I think we're well positioned now to continue moving forward with the project in its current setup.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bazan. Madame Van Belt, please.
Yes, thank you very much. And I would like to echo the thanks of my colleagues for the work that the Canadian Armed Forces have done throughout this crisis. And you're literally saving lives. And I think I speak for all members of the committee when I say we are very grateful. My first question is to Admiral Patterson, specifically about your role as commander of the Health Services Group. I can well imagine that there were additional stresses and demands put on the Health Services Group during this period. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you were able to build resiliency and keep the members of your teams healthy and safe and well throughout this process.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. So as you can imagine, the Canadian Forces Health Services is a finite health resource, just like it is out in the civilian community. So as the pandemic evolved, of course, we not only needed to be ready to respond to Canadians, but we also needed to be ready and to continue to provide care to Canadian Armed Forces members. And thirdly, we also have families, and we need to be able to balance out what's going on in our personal lives with everything that's gone on. So as the pandemic has unrolled, we've made certainly extra efforts to we prioritize the work that needs to be done. We're making sure that the needs of Canadian Armed Forces members are met from a care perspective, as well as our personnel. We have used criteria in our business resumption plans in order to make sure that as many people who can work remotely, because we are a civilian and military team, in order to continuing providing care has been available. We've looked at trying to provide other ways of giving access to Canadian Armed Forces members, such as virtual care, a project we hope to really advance in the future. And then when you talk about resiliency, I think it's working hand in glove at a socially distanced spacing, of course, with the Chief of Defence Staff and trying to meet all of his priorities.
And further to that, in my riding, I don't know which of you would be best to answer this, but the Public Health Agency of Canada is actually in my riding of Ottawa West Nepean. And I did have an opportunity to go there and to thank the Colonel and his team for the work that they were doing. I wonder if you could elaborate more on the integration between the Canadian Armed Forces and the Public Health Agency of Canada, both in the initial stages of the pandemic. I know there were a number of activities also with Ontario Public Health on contact tracing, on logistics, and PPE movement, but also in terms of moving forward, how that integration will continue with the Public Health Agency of Canada.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. This partnership between the Department of National Defence, Canadian Armed Forces, and Public Health Agency is one that we are proud of in support of Canada. As you indicated at the start of this pandemic, we worked very closely with the Public Health Agency. First of all, with the successive repatriations of Canadians from China, Japan, and the United States, and the subsequent quarantine operations that were conducted out of Canadian Forces Base Trenton. Following that, we worked very closely with the Public Health Agency to facilitate the arrival, the storage, and distribution of medical material and personal protective equipment to Canadians. And currently, and moving forward, as I've indicated, we are working closely in support of the Public Health Agency on the vaccine rollout strategy. And I do want to provide one point of clarification on that. The Canadian Armed Forces is working in support of developing a logistic support plan for the actual rollout of the vaccine. The role that the Canadian Armed Forces is going to play, or potentially going to play, in terms of the actual rollout of that vaccine is yet to be defined. That's the work that's ongoing right now to understand the needs of Canadians, provinces, territories, and different jurisdictions. And once Public Health Agency with the CAF in support has worked that out, we would expect a potential request for Canadian Armed Forces assistance that would be considered by our Chief of Defence Staff.
Thank you very much. The other aspect of this that I understand is that in Operation Laser, there is in fact a higher proportion of women who are involved in Operation Laser than perhaps in other operations, including women in leadership positions. If you could comment a little bit about the role that women have played in the domestic operations.
Madam Chair, I'm going to hand back to Admiral Patterson because she is such an inspirational leader in the Canadian Armed Forces for our country and internationally as well. I'd be frank to say women have featured prominently in all aspects of our Operation Laser deployment, but they are also standing tall and proud for our country on operations around the world right now. One powerful example is Major General Jenny Carignan, who is currently the commander of the NATO mission in Iraq. Her tenure, 1 year tenure, is just about to come up. She has led Canadian Armed Forces troops under very difficult and challenging circumstances. And so we look forward to welcoming her back to Canada shortly. I'll hand it over now to Rebecca for additional comment.
Madam Chair, thank you very much for this question, because in my other role, I am the Defence Champion for Women, as I know you're aware. So with that, I thought maybe I'll give you the context of women on Operation Laser. And from the early days, I'm going to use health services as the example, because currently, with about 18 different occupations that reside within health services, we're about 50-50 men and women divisions. So throughout Laser, we had about 1,772 personnel, both regular and reserve force, who were either actively engaged in all facets of Operation Laser or on standby in order to deploy. And out of those 1,700 plus people, over 700 were women. And then when we look at the actual work directly in the long-term care facilities of the health services personnel who were deployed, there was about 729. 393 of them were women. And again, I think it's a good example of where the Canadian Armed Forces really has integrated gender into operations, whether it be domestically or internationally, as General Kadir has said, and everywhere from leadership positions through to being key members of our team from the Army and the Navy and the Air Force. So I think I can honestly say with Operation Laser, we have integrated women fully into everything that's been done.
Madam Chair, if I could just add one to that as well. I'd be remiss if I did not give a shout out to a couple other very strong leaders. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah here is currently commanding Operation Unifier. That's our commitment in Ukraine. That is a first. We recently had returned to Canada Commodore Josie Kurtz, who commanded a NATO standing maritime group as well, which is very significant.
All right. Thank you very much. Now, we do have a little bit of extra time. 4 committee members have indicated that they would like a little extra time to ask another question. Mr. Bazan, Bagnall, Benson, and Baker. The Bees win today. All right, so each will have 3 additional minutes, and you're up first, Mr. Bazan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I thought it was Benson then Bazan, but I'll take it, and then Bob can roll up. I just want to come back quickly on the Armed Forces leadership on the whole avenue of medical intelligence. And so the first organization in the Government of Canada that was aware of COVID-19 was the Canadian Forces Medical Intelligence Unit. Reported that into the through the chain of command, and of course it went to cabinet. There was a bit of delay there by the government in reacting to that intel. Now, what role is Canadian Forces Medical Intelligence playing today in not just this pandemic, but also how it's being observed by our adversaries and how that might change operations of the Canadian Armed Forces?
Madam Chair, thank you for the questions. For the question, our medical intelligence capabilities is a team, of course, that evaluates threats from infectious diseases and other environmental hazards. It is really focused on the health supports or on the Canadian Armed Forces members as it pertains to their deployment on operations. And so we recognize that in very early January, the Public Health Agency had communicated to senior leaders the status of the COVID-19 pandemic. On the heels of that, and throughout this, our medical intelligence team has been collaborating very closely with other government departments, Public Health Agency in particular, but also our allies to scan for developments of this particular threat and other environmental and infectious disease threats to Canadian Armed Forces members on all operations around the globe.
Thank you, and I'll give the rest of my time over to Madam Gallant.
Thank you. Have all personnel deployed to Operation Laser in long-term care facilities been issued non-expired PPE on a daily basis?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. Our Chief of Defense Staff takes very, very seriously the the health of the force, what we refer to as force protection. And so whether he's deploying Canadian Armed Forces members into combat operations or in support of vulnerable Canadians and long-term care, he is very directive in terms of ensuring that they have the safety equipment that they require. The CAF deployment to long-term care was no exception. He issued unambiguous direction that all CAF members would go into long-term care facilities with the medical grade personal protective equipment that they required for that task, and that they would be adequately trained on that equipment. Without exception, all Canadian Armed Forces members that did go into long-term care, they received material that had been certified by either the Public Health Agency of Canada or our Canadian Forces Health Services team to ensure that that equipment complied with medical standards. There was one stock, and I can turn to our Surgeon General to amplify this as required, a stock of nitrile gloves that had reached their expiry date and had required certification before being issued to members. And that was only after our health services and medical folks had determined that that material still was compliant with all health standards. So I'll just turn it over to the Surgeon General to see if you'd like to amplify that.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, we worked with Mr. Crosby's team and his quality engineering test establishment to make sure to recertify based on the industry standard any material, personal protective equipment and gloves in that instance that were past the expiry date on the label, and we were able to certify that they were still valid and usable by our people.
Given how long it takes to replace fighter jets, helicopters, ships, it's not a stretch to wonder whether or not the pandemic PPE was expired. But I'm receiving reports that people had to use masks that had expired in 2003. And there was nothing to share with frontline workers at the nursing homes. They had nothing other than what they could get their hands on from maybe Home Depot at that point. So I'm really concerned that our stores had not been replenished since the SARS outbreak. Can you offer me some reassurance there?
Madam Chair, so I am not tracking mask that was from 2003 that has been delivered to our members for any of their tasks. So for sure, there was that lot of gloves that we tested and were able to recertify.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Bagnall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to thank all our witnesses for your very comprehensive and knowledgeable answers, and also for protecting the troops in my riding, all the regular troops in my riding, which is all of the Yukon. They each have their own office, and they both have a separate entrance into the building. I have just one question in two parts, and it's for Admiral Patterson. And I want to zoom in on the needs of women in particular. The first part is if you could identify any special unique challenges for women caused by COVID situation and any accommodation for that. And then secondly, our active troops are only half the story. Their families are the other half, as you mentioned, actually. I'm glad you mentioned that. And any, once again, for the women and children and men that have to stay home, there's great challenges as well, including mental health. So any special challenges of women that stay home and any services or accommodations for that. Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. I think I could say that COVID affects men and women, and men and women service members, and how it impacts on their families is the same. Can I tell you that there are any specific or unique challenges faced by women? who serve that were not faced by men, and that's not something that we can answer right now. However, what I can say is that the Chief of Defence Staff established a very good criteria to use to look at people who absolutely essentially needed to be at work. And one of those considerations were family issues, whether it be the essential requirement to provide childcare, or perhaps having a family member who was immunocompromised in some way that could be impacted. So I would say that the special and unique challenges were taken into account for all men and women who serve in terms of the criteria established by the Chief of Defence Staff as to who would be working or deploying or participating in op laser or day-to-day operations.
Thank you.
Mr. Benson, 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. We talked earlier about how we pulled back on some of our training, how we brought troops home from foreign missions, and we devoted a lot of resources to COVID-19. How has that affected our adversaries, our people like Russia and China? Have they taken advantage of this in any way? Particularly China, have they seen this as a weakness, and somehow are they trying to take advantage of it?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. We are very sensitive at once to the needs of Canadians, and our Chief of Defence Staff has directed, of course, through Operation Laser, that we will remain poised and prepared to respond to the evolving needs of our country. But he has also been unambiguous that we need to continue to be ready for any potential external threats to Canada and Canadians. And so because of that, what we've seen across this country in recent months is a reinvigoration of some of our individual and collective training in training areas across Canada to include live fire maneuver training. And so it is absolutely essential that while we continue to support Canadians throughout this pandemic, that with the residual capacity that we have, we maintain our first generation, our training activities for operations abroad, so that no potential adversaries can take advantage of that. And again, we have surged back out to continue to operate in over 20 missions around the globe alongside our allies, safely respecting the COVID environment, but also to deliver the mission that our government has sent us out to do.
So you don't think that a country like China is taking advantage of the situation to, do something to Taiwan or Hong Kong or other areas of the world, thinking that we have a weakness because we're focusing more internally on our own country at this time?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. I think different adversaries and competitors, whether they be state-based or violent extremist organizations, are absolutely trying to capitalize on the environment, the uncertainty, the chaos that's been brought on by the pandemic. It's for that exact reason that our Chief of Defence Staff has directed us to maintain our edge and to continue to conduct the training that's required for our members to be effective on operations when they deploy.
All right, thank you very much. Monsieur Brunel Duceppe, 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I would like to thank you for your presence here today and for your exceptional work, which is so necessary. So that would be the first thing that I'd like to say before saying until we see each other again. And then my second question, I think that the Army was involved in the major centers with Operation Laser. Right now in Lac-Saint-Jean, my region, it's a remote region, relatively remote, and is one of the areas where we have the greatest number of infection in Quebec and in Canada. And this is a situation for hospitals, also for long-term care facilities, and it's over more than 1 hour from any military base. For those rural areas, do the armed forces have any plans for rapid deployment if they were to be needed? Madam Chair, thank you for the question.
The first wave of the pandemic, the Canadian Armed Forces has set a domestic ready force consisting of regular force, reserve force, Canadian Rangers, and of course we have some great civilians in support as well, prepared to respond to the needs of not only major urban areas but also rural environments as well. And we saw quite a bit of that during the first wave of the pandemic with deployments to Nunavik and Basse-Côte-Nord in the province of Quebec, for example, with Canadian Rangers surging throughout remote communities in their respective provinces and territories. And so that will continue, I expect, fully as we continue to operate through this pandemic.
Rapidement, là, le ministre.
Quickly, question. Minister Saint-Jean said 2 weeks ago that he came here to the committee and he said he was trying to see what type of role that reservists could play in the pandemic at this point in time. Have you continued your reflection on your side? Madam Chair, thank you very much for the question.
The Canadian Reserves, Army, Air Force, and Navy have featured prominently throughout the domestic response, whether it be Operation Globe and Operation Laser as well. I would give you one very strong, powerful example. The Canadian Armed Forces support to long-term care in the province of Ontario. There was a very significant reserve presence inside of those long-term care facilities. Those are young Canadian reservists that were serving their nation with pride and compassion towards Canadians in their time of need. And so we've seen that across the country with reservists postured to act as local response forces. And I expect that will continue throughout the balance of this pandemic.
Mr. Garrison, there's 2.5 minutes, Mr. Garrison, if you'd like a question.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I want to thank Rear Admiral Patterson for highlighting the role that Canadian military families play in partnership with the Canadian Armed Forces and in everything that they do. I want to ask a specific question about the impact of COVID on recruiting for the Canadian Forces and for the reserves. I know that we have had trouble meeting targets for recruiting, and I'm suspecting COVID has presented some challenges there. But I also believe that the economic crisis that the economy is in generally will also present some opportunities as unemployment rises if we can make Canadians aware of the opportunities in the Canadian Forces. So I'd like to hear something about the impact on recruiting of COVID.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. Like all of our activities in the Canadian Armed Forces, early in the pandemic, we had to work out how we were going to organize in order to continue to conduct our activities safely and in a responsible way, and that included recruiting. And so, in the early period of this pandemic, as we compressed our activities, activated our business continuity plans, the same applied for our recruiting centers until we could learn how to optimize the use of digital tools, and much of that has happened recently. And so we have reinvigorated our recruiting efforts, which are absolutely essential to a large force, any military force. We have an element of attrition on an annual basis. And therefore, it's imperative that we continue to bring young Canadians that want to serve their country in, and ensure that they're trained in a timely manner to integrate into operations. And so that is happening. And I would agree with you absolutely, Madam Chair, that the Canadian Armed Forces presents a tremendous employment opportunity for young Canadian men and women.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to join all other members of the committee in thanking the witnesses for their testimony today.
Yes, thank you very much. And from all of us, thank you to all of our witnesses today. We understand just how precious your time is, and we appreciate you taking that time with us today. I think it was a very, very helpful session. Et aussi, nous vous remercions pour...
We also like to thank you for your service to Canadians. Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Thank you, Madam Chair.